What's going on? How's it going? It's been a bit. It's been a little over a week. Yeah, sorry, took most of the week off. I didn't really trade. It's OPEX, CPI, two things that I never trade. So usually you're looking at questionable price action. I won't lie, I took a trade at the start of the week and it was a loss. It was on a Monday. It was just a bad loss. Day before CPI, I already normally wouldn't trade it. And I was just overconfident from just being on such a roll the last month and week. So it was a good little humble check kind of thing to remind me like to stay nimble and stick to my rules. So yeah, after that, and then just watching the price action on that Monday, I just was like, yeah, this week is going to be bunk. And ironically, I never trade OPEX, and ironically, the largest move happened, well, technically Thursday Asia session into OPEX, I guess. Most of the clean unwind happened during Asia session. And yeah, that was just because we saw a huge change in the way that dealers were hedged, basically. There was a huge unwind that happened essentially Thursday New York session. So that changed the whole scope of things. So I'll get into that and what you could have seen to kind of predict it ahead of time, look at it ahead of time. That was, like I said, it was a really tough day to just hold to my rules and be like, you never trade OPEX. You already broke your rules once at the start of the week. We're not going to do it again. I just, I narrated a little bit and I was like, oh yeah, here we go. I was saying under the hood at the start of the week that it looked like it was a squeeze. I don't have that message here, but I said under the hood looks like a squeeze. The reason being is, let's zoom out a little bit. On ES earlier in the week up here, we had huge positive delta days on CVD. A lot of contracts being bought. Like we're talking positive 10K delta, plus 20K delta. That was Wednesday. Huge amounts. And so initially I was like, yeah, this could be a squeeze. We're just like waiting to see if if they breach 7640. I said too in the Discord, I was like, I'm not trading this. I said the only way I will get involved is if it breaks 7640 or if it breaks below 75. I kept going in between 7570 to 7550. And that's because there's a gamma flip that was dancing around down there. And that's where we could really see some fallout. That happened at the end of the day Thursday session. But that was end of the day. And then, and then we're into OPEX and yeah, so whatever. Just no more trades for me. Just had to watch it fall, which is kind of rough, but it did play out kind of how I thought. But after all those huge positive delta days on CVD, where I was basically saying this could, ES is trading like it wants to squeeze. The one thing that was holding me back, or there was a couple things. NQ was not. NQ was doing the opposite. NQ kept diving into the negatives during New York session. It would, especially towards the end of the day, it would flip negative. Even if it was positive, the delta would go negative. So these two were very still uncorrelated. So bifurcated market, still not a fun market to trade when the two indices that are supposed to be correlated are not acting correlated. So that's already another sign of like you're going to have this huge tug of war back and forth. You had NQ was just getting slaughtered and ES was just getting pumped up. Let's go back to, so this is a program that I'm building right now. It's not public yet. You won't even be able to access it if you try, but eventually it will be. Anyways, so this is basically just showing GEX gamma levels, net GEX, that shows right there. So today, this is OPEX end of the day, we finished net GEX negative 71 billion. What a flip. So on Wednesday, this was positive 43 billion. And that basically showed that it was more so above 7,600 area. I think it was 7,600, 7,610. This is converted from SPX, of course, too. But around that, it was a huge gamma call wall kind of basically. So just a ton of call volume active at that strike. So there was just essentially a ton of calls. The net X, so that's just the delta, the difference. So it was plus 41 billion. I don't know the total amount, but so there's a ton of call options that were expiring this week that were basically holding the market up on ES. And what I think was happening and why I quickly switched after I said it looks like a squeeze, I realized what was going on, because number one, NQ, ES, they're not acting the same. NQ is very bearish and Delta was the opposite. I said here, I was responding to some people too. I said, I take back that squeeze prediction, realizing with the plus 47 billion in GEX, that large Positive delta on CVD could be the dealers hedging with futures to keep SPX pinned for OPEX. I'll post all the order flow and options data later on, right? So that's, didn't get around to posting on YouTube. I just posted in Discord, but yeah, this is me talking about it now. But yeah, basically, and I said, yeah, I'd rather chase above 76.40 or sell below 75.70 respectively. You could take whatever NQ was at that point, kind of, because NQ was really bumping around. But yeah, and where this thing really started to collapse was right below 75.70. So I posted this. This was Wednesday during the day over here. Or is this, yeah, Wednesday during the day anyways. And then so it really started to fade into the day, and then it started to accelerate, kind of pump up at the end. And, you know, people were wondering if that was like another reversal and we're going to go higher, but sellers just held it below 75.70, and that was your cue. And then it just melted from there. So yeah, again, like I said, tough to not take that trade because of what I, you know, was playing out how I thought, but, rules are rules. And if you stick to them over time, you'll find things just start to work out for you. So, yeah, 75.70 was the gamma flip. So yeah, so that was the flip basically that I'd seen below. So once it flipped that, basically that changed the regime that ES was in. So that changed it to negative gamma. So in negative gamma territory, that's when dealers have to switch their hedging style to their hedging with volatility. So they're selling lows, buying highs. So as we kind of go down below this gamma flip level and we're into a lot of negative GEX territory, so basically a lot of put contracts are starting to go in the money as the lower we go. That can kind of accelerate things, especially if we're below the gamma flip. Gamma flip, that's, you know, picture like foot on the gas pedal, you know, how the acceleration of it kind of thing. So above that gamma flip, we were pinning. That was positive gamma. So that regime calls for essentially dealers, options dealers, market makers. They're hedging against volatility. So they're buying lows, selling highs. So think more range bound, below negative gamma, think expansion, right? So that's where it really started to run below there. And then we ended the day basically right by this put support. So that was there's just this huge put wall essentially. It's just, the price loves to do this. These walls that are, you know, call wall, put wall, you'll see it's basically where there's a huge concentration of either put contracts, call contracts, like options contracts, where if it gets in that territory, then they're in the money, and then they can start, you know, essentially if they'll get exercised on the expiry, or they're just all of a sudden a lot more profitable, and, you know, they're probably in profit, a lot of them. So yeah, we kind of ended the day right above that, but yeah, we're in big negative gamma territory for both NQ and ES. Again, this is just translated from SPX, NDX, SPY, QQQ. That's where a lot of these options are resting, and then we're just translating them to futures so you can get an idea of the numbers for that. So yeah, tough to really say because now we have an aggregate of the NetGex negative 71 billion. So now we're basically a lot of people sold out of their calls. So there was a ton of calls, like I said, at the start of the week that the market was trying to stay pinned to around that level. And the unwind started to happen Thursday. We saw a huge flip in NetGex, basically. So that was just a ton of call options, maybe realizing that the market was not going to go their way, or it was not going to continue going up. Basically, if we're looking at futures on ES, 7,600 was just getting sold all day. It was just, you know, gap down at the start of the week and we could barely hold above it. So this is just a huge level to watch out for. Anything above 7,600 is proving really difficult without news to get us above there. But yeah, it was just getting sold all day and then just continued to reject, and then finally started to give out once. You know, it took all week, but that's why I was like, there's no point in trying to sell or trying to even be directional with the market because we were pinned so much, because ES, SPX, SPY, they were in such huge positive gamma territory where dealers were just suppressing any volatility, and they were just keeping the price pinned there essentially until maybe it was them that essentially realized, like, you know, there's too much selling pressure and, you know, they could be drastically caught offside if any news started to take it down, because we were really close to that flip area. So yeah, they switched their hedging style. A lot of call options sold out, and then finally just like the bottom opened up. As far as next week, well, let's just take a look at the order flow here. So, I mean, it was pretty right at the start here. So you saw basically like right at close, you saw a huge push like right into that 75.70 level. And like I said, just like basing it straight off of that gamma flip. And then we see a lot of some big sells here too. It's all concentrated. You kind of really have to zoom in. But yeah, there was a lot of sells, a lot of buys, and then a lot more sells basically. Right concentrated into market close. So then when market opens, we basically want to see, you know, if we're going to continue to stay pinned, we got to get back above that level. Since we didn't, it really just started to open up. And you didn't, and two, you definitely like don't want to get below here, because that's where you saw some kind of like a breakdown of sellers, and then that gave way quickly. But that's where sellers really started to try and push, essentially all below 75.70. That's where they got really excited and they wanted to continue pushing. So once it went below there, you know, it just continued, and then you see another big sell, and then actually respects it perfectly. And yeah, just no hope for buyers really. There was like, you know, right at open, sure, pumped, but you know, didn't even make it close up there kind of thing. And then you see this 1.3K lot seller. So that's big. You see all these buys just going nowhere above. So that's just straight absorption at the highs. So yeah, this is kind of 75.30, 75.40, anywhere in that zone you want to keep an eye on. I would just put that as like kind of a intra-week pivot for next week. But to me, you know, this is like likely basically the way we're looking at it now. And I see a lot of people are kind of going, okay, there's a big SMT, right? NQ, previous week low swept, previous month low swept. ES bouncing on previous month mid, has not swept previous week low. Again, that was probably the reason for the huge push up, thinking, oh, that's a mega SMT, kind of like go from here. This is all just big manipulation. But, you know, if you're tracking NECX and you're seeing where the flip was, and basically there's just like no call volume in this territory. This is net too, so you'd want to see it, you know, kind of flipping back and forth to see like there would be some stoppage, but it really just accelerates down from here. So yeah, at that point, it's just you can't really get serious until you get back above 75.70. So you know, at that point, like sure, that was a good bounce to take. This was standard deviation marked out from this manipulation was at Thursday open. So this is the SMT right here. ES made a higher high. So you mark that out. That's on a key open right there. And then you eventually see, I think it's the 3.5. That kind of makes sense. Like if you're expecting NQ to take previous week lows because it's way weaker than ES, currently at least, you know, it's probably a good place. If you look back in order flow too, I'm sure you'd see a lot of buys in that area. So yeah, this will be a key level to lose for sure. I do expect it to come and tap these naked POCs down there eventually. But I'm sure it won't be without like kind of an attempt at a move up and then maybe rejection lower. And then I'd like to see probably pretty decently significant retrace. But here's like, so I think basically we'll essentially retrace pretty significantly, maybe it might even just be down to this 0.382, 28. And we'll see. This will be a very interesting range because everyone's forgetting, we made a historical run from the start of the year in a very short amount of time with really no retrace back to any like key levels on a Fibonacci standpoint, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, didn't really see any like huge retrace at all, especially through the start. So this was kind of like a nothing burger when it retraced to there. That was nothing. So at minimum, I expect 0.382 to be taken. If we end up instead quickly reclaiming and then going higher, then there's two ways I'll look at this. If we deeply retrace, if we deeply retrace and we go down either to the 0.5, so it could be even the 0.32. Okay, yeah, look for that. 0.5, yeah, look for that. Look for that. Basically look for essentially a strong bounce, recovery, whatever from any of those levels. That'll be super key for sure. especially on ES, if ES finally starts to give way. However, if we simply, if this was just merely a manipulation and we actually do swing up and reclaim, I can't really say what's going to happen. We'll see. Then I'm going to treat this very much so as a quick blow off top, final blow off top again, just like quick and aggressive right through the other side. And then from there, I'll expect like a complete failure, essentially. We would have to essentially remeasure that. I would expect like a complete failure. I mean, I'm sure it'll maybe go a little bit lower than this. Complete failure from up there. And then I would want to see like mega dumping. That would be like it, the bull market's over. Tell your parents to fucking sell their Roth IRAs or whatever and retirement accounts they have. Oh, that's the wrong one. Anyways, but yeah, if we see basically just a deeper retrace into these key levels, then hey, this is a retrace and we're going to continue higher. I have a feeling they'll really get it to a point of like where people are crying Armageddon. And then we'll deeply retrace down, and then, there'll be like some next version to this. I think it'll come in the form of tech earnings. We have a lot of tech earnings coming up for the next few weeks. So that could be something to watch out for. Again, basically, TSM has their earnings was just like, absolutely blew everything out of the park. So really, really strong earnings still coming. They're basically saying there's just like a huge amount of demand, and essentially the demand is switching. From what I'm realizing, the demand is switching for AI. It's not as much consumer focused. Like, yeah, that's definitely still a key aspect of it. And it's not even as much integration focused. AI is not good enough and cheap enough right now for larger companies to essentially like replace troves of employees with AI. It can definitely do a lot for sure, and it can replace some very like mediocre jobs within the white collar sector. However, a lot of really, big tasks and stuff, it still makes a lot of mistakes. But there is still essentially right now a race towards AGI or super intelligence, basically. Basically, the main race right now with, there, of course, these companies are competing against each other when you talk about Anthropic or OpenAI, but under the hood, it's really a race between countries and governments. And it's a race to essentially whatever company can create the first super intelligence level of AI. Because at that point, what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to get AI good enough to the point where it can essentially code on its own, fix its own mistakes, essentially just like, code itself essentially, and on its own develop and research newer and better AIs. Because if you can automate that process, then the race to super intelligence will just be like supercharged. Basically, AI can just the entire time just run on its own, thinking, improving, building new systems, coding new frameworks, whatever, to get better models of AI, and then you just get closer and closer to super intelligence. And essentially, it sounds pretty dark, but the reason being is that it's looked at as whatever country/company gets to that level of AI first, super intelligence. At that point, they will become, some level of dictatorship, world ruler, because it'll just be able to outthink anything and everyone. And at that point, any level of super intelligence like that will be able to replace like most jobs. It'll just be a question of what jobs are allowed to be replaced. For example, like even if we get to that level, I'm sure a robot could easily take care of your baby. Would parents be comfortable trusting a robot to take care of the baby? Maybe not, essentially, because, Terminator and stuff. But yeah, so there'll be things that just like politically or socially, it won't be allowed, or, people won't want it to replace those jobs. But for the most part, it will be able to do anything at that point. So that'll be a really scary time, but I think that is far off. So the race still continues. Governments are still dumping money into this. They're still encouraging a lot of investment into this because that is the main concern. That's what they've been sold essentially, is that the first government that gets to super intelligence will just at that point become like the forever world superpower, and everyone else will essentially have to like bow down to them. And that, don't take that just from me, that is from a former OpenAI employee who's kind of a whistleblower right now. I can't remember his name. You can search it up, but yeah, he did a really, really good podcast on Diary of a CEO. So that is something to definitely take a look in. But yeah, anyways, that's a long aside. Back into it. Commitment Traders Report. I don't know if is it updated? 13. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it does. Yeah, that did update. Yeah, because it's all the way down there. Yeah. So, fresh data shows, TIF report. Oh wait, we're on NASDAQ. Yeah. So a little bit of a downtick, nothing crazy. Where are we here? Oh, let's go back to ES. Is this fresh too? Yeah, 7497. Yeah, that's current. Yeah, tiny bit of a downtick too. Nothing major, just probably repositioning, I guess, if anything. Yeah, nothing really major at all right there. So nothing to freak out about. But yeah, I could see like this just tricking people thinking like, oh yeah, that was a manipulation. We're just going to go up from here. Instead, we, manipulate a little bit higher and then reject again, come down and really test some of these levels down here. We'll see. I think that's all for now. Let's see here. Yeah. Let's do some fun TR pocket stuff. If anyone remembers, you can go back to earlier videos. TR pocket, one of my favorite Fibonacci extensions. Most recent swing low to swing high. Boom, right there. So there's your TR pocket. That gave you almost a bottom tick entry for about 200 points. Oh, it went up to there. Well, what are we on? Oh, we're on the hourly, right? Yeah, so. So naked POCs down there, so they're on tap. So it kind of made sense that New York sold through slope line and lows and scooped them. And then, yeah, just that was like your ultimate bottom right there. Sweeps previous month though, that also makes sense. Is it really going to OPEX, it wouldn't have surprised me if it actually stayed above previous month low. But anyways, yeah, it was already very negative gamma territory. So a lot of volatility, you can expect it to actually, when you see positive gamma, that's when you can expect it to stay within range and not sweep important lows and highs. But in negative gamma territory on both these, yeah, it makes total sense that it swept it. But yeah, and then ultimately on a higher time frame, like 15-minute, yeah, it essentially did hold the TR pocket. Still, you would have had to essentially re-enter off that on the reclaim. But yeah, after that, it went up like 500 points essentially. So quite a bit. So TR pocket still goated. Zoom out here a little bit. I will be curious if that holds. The TR pocket right here. We'll see. I could even see, you see a lot of naked POCs stacked around this previous quarter mid. So I could see anywhere in this 27,700s holding. That would be a very interesting place for it to hold. Obviously, you'd want to see it come down and touch the 0.5, but that might be too obvious. It'd be even crazier if it really slid all the way down here to the golden pocket. Then at that point, if the golden pocket just holds strong, I would be super long at that point. Like I'd be like, holy crap, this thing is gonna absolutely go parabolic and rip faces. But if we just get a quick little retest and then we get a strong push up, then I'll look at that as a manipulation and then we can just look to sell essentially lower. And at that point, I would just, call it quits on buying for the next 10 years kind of thing. I would just try and find other safer places to put your money because that would mean this market's pretty toast. But anyways, that is all for now. I think we'll just honestly see how it goes next week, see how price action goes next week and go from there. I'll be back next week. There's no data next week, which is crazy. I know that sounds, it is summer, so we'll see how the price action goes. But if we continue to stick in negative gamma territory, it'll be a very fun trading, honestly, for sure. So anyways, that's all. Take care. Good luck. Enjoy your weekend.